Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Chad Benson Show. I am Brian Wilson filling in for Chad Benson, out doing a little thing with family for a couple of days. Be back on Monday. Glad to be with you. I am still your Farb. I am your friend and retired buddy, but I still like to come on the radio now and then and get some things off my chest so that my bulldog doesn't get tired of hearing me rant. I have to talk to real people now and then. Listen, it's been an interesting morning. Just a few moments ago, let me bring you up to speed. We had Donald Trump answering questions in the Oval. He talked a lot about Ukraine. He talked a lot about education. He was all over the place, as often these press conferences go, depending on the questions. And so here's a little sample of what he had to say, starting with education and then moving into Ukraine.
So one thing we're doing well on, we're number one on the list, is cost per pupil. We spend more money than any other country in the world by far. So I jokingly say the one thing we do well on is the cost. We spend more money, and yet we're toward the bottom of the list. Yeah.
Mr. President, I want to ask you, the joint address, millions of Americans watched your joint address earlier this week, where you warned that there could be a little disturbance that Americans could feel as a function of these taxes, these tariffs. How much disturbance are you willing to accept in the near term as a function of that? And to set expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, I mean, what you couldn't hear that. He was talking about the tariffs that are going to be put in place, and Americans, and this is what I was talking about yesterday. There will be a little pain before the gain, but he talks about that.
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much, because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks. And these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve because it was unfair, although I'm sure they'll take advantage of it. I see they're driving a lot of cars into the U.S. to try and avoid the tariffs, and they're taking advantage of it a little bit. But
isn't that interesting that apparently they're driving cars that were built in Canada into America to avoid the tariffs that might be coming, and they've got an extra month to do so. I have a feeling that there won't be any cars in Canada outside the Ford plant by the time we get to that month.
They called me, they asked me, they said, could they have a little bit of help? And I decided, they're American companies, USMCA, and I let them have that. But this really kicks in, the reciprocals, kicks in on, let's see, I guess the 2nd. And I wanted it to be the 1st so badly. It just didn't want to be on April Fool's Day. So I made it the 2nd. That's going to cost a lot of money. That one day is going to cost a lot of money, but that's okay. But I don't see it. I don't see anything. I see good reports. I think we're going to have good numbers from the beginning. Now, globalists won't love this because this brings jobs back to America. So if they're coming back to America, maybe you'll lose some in other parts of the world. But the other parts of the world have done very well, and they'll continue to do very well. But I think the United States is going to be doing record business. We'll bring a lot of those 90,000 factories that have been lost over the last number of years. It's been, it's hard to believe. 90,000, think of what 90,000 is. 90,000 plants and factories are gone. We're going to bring back many of those plants and factories.
So there he was just a few moments ago. He did talk about Ukraine a great deal and his efforts to try to get that going. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the broadcast. But he's, look, every day with Trump, it is winning. And then compare and contrast that to what's going on the other side of the equation, where you have raving lunatics like Maxine Waters. She's out there just throwing out just making all kinds of outrageous claims, looking pretty weird and ridiculous.
And we don't know everything that Elon Musk has done with his high technology ass.
His high technology ass. Oh my gosh. Isn't it interesting how all of a sudden in politics, it's okay to drop the S-bomb or the F-bomb or talk about, somebody like Maxine Waters just did about Elon Musk. Isn't that interesting that that's happening now? And nobody really blinks an eye. We really should do a long piece sometime about the coarsening of civil discourse in America and how ugly it has gotten and how, this is visceral and mean and nasty.
We don't know what he's been accused of by some as it may relate to the election, but we're not going to give up.
Yeah, we're not going to give up. Here is Hakeem Jeffries, who is, I guess, the highest-ranking Democrat in Washington right now, as the minority leader of the House, and he's talking about the other day where they censured Al Green. So here is Hakeem talking about the censure, and here is the reaction from Mike Johnson, who, by the way, was outnumbered today. He was the lucky guy in the center chair. That was interesting. But here is Hakeem, followed by Johnson's response.
The censure resolution put forth by extreme MAGA Republicans is not worth the paper that it was written on.
He was censured for disrupting the proceedings of the House. And while I was reading the censure that was voted in, by the way, by 10 House Democrats who joined Republicans in that, they disrupted the proceedings of the House. So there's some irony there. We have to keep decorum.
Yeah, we do need decorum, and they're just looking pretty ragged and irregular and out of control and undisciplined, all of those things, and it's starting to show up in the polls. Here is CNN pollster Harry Enton on that very point about how Trump is winning and the Democrats look ridiculous.
Let me just say a few things. Number one, when it comes to government spending, Americans are in love with the idea of cutting government spending, much more so than they were 5 years ago. I think it's like 55% of Americans who say they want to cut the size of government. They want to make sure it's doing less, not more. I think the number was reversed, with 55% who said it should be doing more back in 2020. So that's one thing. But Elon Musk is not a popular guy. I mean, that's the bottom line here. If he is leading this effort, I think it's going to go it's not going to go as far as it would if Congress was leading the effort. And this, I think, is the big question. Can Republicans in Congress actually get their act together? They have such a thin majority. If they can, and they're the ones who are in charge of cutting the spending, that would be a much better situation for Republicans.
I think he's right about that, by the way. But I mean, I sort of liked having Elon there. He's drawing all of the fire. He doesn't care. He's Elon Musk. He's got more money than God. I mean, come on. He's not worried at all about this. And as long as they're aiming their fire at Elon, and by the way, Elon sort of got told the other day, look, let the secretaries, make the final decisions, make it recommendations to them, and let them make the final decisions, because it's their department. So he's sort of been told, to work through the process through the actual secretaries, and we may, because of that, see a more refined process. But beyond that, what you're hearing from Harry Enton here is that Americans like what Trump is doing. They love the fact that he's cutting government. They love the fact that he's doing the things he's going to do, securing the border, trying to end wars. All these things are popular. And for some reason, because of their Trump derangement syndrome, the Democrats simply have to be against anything that Donald Trump is for. He's trying to stop a war. Well, we're against them stopping the war. I mean, they have to take these ridiculous positions. It's been said and noted by others, and I'll agree with it, that the Democrats are rallying around these positions that only have about 20% support in America, while Donald Trump is out there doing the thing that 80% of Americans want him to do. And his numbers are looking real good. Here is a former Democrat pollster, I guess he's still a Democrat pollster, Mark Penn. I like Mark Penn. He's a Democrat pollster, but he tells you like it is. And his point on the Rita Cosby show in New York was that, the Democrats are really screwing it up.
And I just think the idea of the Democrats thinking they could sit there through this and not kind of be part of the process, and people not showing up at all. Look, Trump is a duly elected president in a joint session speech. Everybody should be there. Everybody should be polite. They'll get their opportunities to, do their thing. And look, it's a reality that the person giving the speech has a double-barreled shotgun, and the person giving the response has a pop gun. But Trump, that was probably his best, I think his best speech ever, really. And I think the emotional power of the examples and the stories that he told, and I'm looking at some of the poll numbers, coming back on it, was very strong. And the Democrats look silly. And Democratic numbers are really tanking.
Yep.
They are at the lowest point that I have ever seen the Democratic Party since maybe, the days that it lost 49 states.
How about that? That's from a Democrat pollster. He sees that Trump is doing well and the Democrats are at a very low point. They're just in absolute chaos. The Democrats are. I mean, look, I'm okay with that. Don't get me wrong, but it is remarkable that they can't find a message or a messenger or anything, and that they're just running around doing crazy stuff like breaking up the president's address, which did not sell well with the American people. It didn't. Al Green was wrong, and some of the other Democrats were wrong to act that way, and it didn't help them. I don't know what they think it's helping, but it's not helping them. I mean, it's just nuts. Not every Democrat believes that they're taking the right approach. From FoxNews.com, former Democrat Joseph Knowles criticizes Democrats' behavior. A group of Democrat members of Congress who jeered, displayed handheld signs in protest, or used other methods to distract from President Donald Trump's speech on Tuesday evening to Congress have been reprimanded in a closed-door meeting with their own leadership, according to a recent report. Multiple Democratic members of Congress made headlines for their very public protest during Trump's speech Tuesday evening to a joint session of Congress. Notably, as you know, Democrat Al Green was censured by Congress on Thursday morning after he shouted. It's a consultative process, one source familiar told Axios of the meetings that have occurred since then. Involving both protesting members and House Democrat leadership, we understand the pressure they are under. They were not being talked to like they are children. We are helping them to understand why their strategy is a bad idea. See, they get it. So don't expect the chaos to last forever, but for right now, it's just delicious, isn't it, to watch them flailing around? Here's another one from thehill.com. Democrats divided over way forward under Trump. You think? Democrats are struggling with which direction to take their party amid President Trump's turbulent return to office. Noting the hard turn of the country to the right, some operatives say the party swung too far left, alienating moderates and handing the Republicans firepower. Others say the progressive movement is where the energy is and where it will continue in the future. So they're debating this, according to thehill.com. Part of the reason we are in this is because our party became almost too big a tent and we lost our way. No one really knows what we are right now. One case in point, a bizarre video featuring House Democrats that showed up a handful of congresswomen pretending to be boxing in a video game-style mashup that read, "Choose Your Fighter." Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez self-identified as a Trekkie, while House Minority Leader Catherine Clark is not into hair dye. Some of the bullet points descriptors read. I mean, it was just ridiculous, looking idiotic. And again, who do you think this is resonating with? I don't understand it. I don't understand the way they're doing it. I don't imagine that they'll be this way forever, but for now, it's great to watch, isn't it? More in a moment, 20 after the hour.
All right, Jolton, we've got some road construction slowing down eastbound 24 just past Whites Creek Pike, fixing some potholes there. Got some police activity blocking the right lane, 40 eastbound past Fessler's Lane. And in Franklin, a crash blocking the right exit lane, 65 southbound before Murfreesboro Road. And the man with the power to raise or lower interest rates just gave an update. We'll tell you about it at 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
That's Ken Weaver. He's in the news closet over there, making sure that all of our basic news is covered at the top and the bottom of the hour. We got Bell K pushing the blinky buttons. Good to be here in for Chad Benson. I am Brian Wilson. We've been talking about Democrats in disarray. Let's talk for a moment about all the winning that's going on the other side of the equation. I mean, I'm not going to be able to touch all of it because there's so much of it going on. And I know I get criticized a lot for liking polls, but here's one I think you'll like. You ready? From CBS. Right after they queried some 1,207 adults following the president's speech on Tuesday, found that 76% of respondents either strongly or somewhat approved of Trump's message, and only 23% disapproved. I mean, it's working. I mean, you know, those are great numbers. I mean, it's hard to get 76% of Americans to agree on anything, and they say that they are strongly or somewhat approved of the Trump's message. And only 23% disapproved. Speech resonated emotionally with viewers. 68% said it made him feel hopeful. 54% said it made him feel proud. 16% of respondents reported feeling angry. And 27% said they were worried. Okay. Poll also measured support for key policies President Trump outlined during his speech. You want to go through some of those? 77% support his plan to cut government waste and spending. 77, more than three quarters of Americans like that Trump is out there cutting government waste, fraud, and abuse with his friend Elon Musk. 77%. Wow. 77% back his immigration and border policies. 76%, as we said, approve of the speech overall. And here's one. If Al Green thought that he was making a big point and that he was going to find sympathy with America over his disruption of the president's speech, he needs to be disabused of that notion. 76% approve of removing the congressman who interrupted the speech. That's amazing. So there you go. That is the take, and a good take on that from CBS News. When you have a thing where more than three quarters of Americans believe that Trump did the right thing, and that his speech is emblematic of the policies that they support. I mean, that's a mandate. I don't care how you look at it. It's a mandate. And Trump is right to push hard. To keep doing the things that, 75, 80% of Americans want him to do. The things that he promised to do when he ran for election. It's just astonishing. I think more than anything, you should ask this question, pollsters. Are you pleased that Donald Trump is doing the things that he promised he was going to do? Because I think that goes a long way with the American people. You say you're going to do this, and then by gosh, you do it. Yeah, has it been perfect? No. Has there been a few bumps in the road? Absolutely. When you're trying to do hard things, not everything goes according to plan. And Elon Musk maybe bumped it up, made a couple of what weren't great political moves, and I'll give him that. But, I mean, by and large, the American people are very supportive of what he's doing. So go ahead and attack Elon Musk. They like what he's doing. Democrats are glomming on to the issues that only 20, 30% of Americans agree with them on. They're going all the way. They're putting down their marker that they're going to support these issues, which the American people have rejected through the last election, and now through the polling data we're seeing. They're seeing the Trump administration doing the things that they promised to do, and they like it. Man, to be in this position. Trump is you have to say, he's a popular president. Democrats unpopular. And they seem to be flailing around and not able to come up with a message that sticks, and they can't help themselves. They're so wedded to these loser policies that they've had all this time that Americans have roundly rejected, and they just don't, they're just lost. That's great as far as I'm concerned. What do they say? What do they say when your opponent is failing and flailing? What should you do? Nothing. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't engage with them on their level. I mean, just give the American people the stuff that they want. Right now, Democrats are irrelevant to the conversation. They really are. Because they're not where the American people are by any degree, by any stretch of the imagination. It's time for the news now with Ken Weaver at 12:30.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Again, Jolton, we've got rolling roadblocks to fix potholes, so that's slowing down 24 eastbound just past Whites Creek Pike. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. Doctors and other healthcare providers in Tennessee will be able to refuse care over personal or religious beliefs without fear of any lawsuits under a bill advancing at the state capitol. For example, if a pharmacist has religious objections, they wouldn't have to fill a prescription for birth control. But doctors and healthcare professionals will not be able to deny care to a specific group of people. And the bill does not override the federal right to emergency care. This bill has passed the state Senate and is headed to the state House. And the man with the power to raise or lower interest rates just gave an update.
Despite elevated levels of uncertainty, the U.S. economy continues to be in a good place. The labor market is solid, and inflation has moved closer to our 2% longer-run goal.
That's Fed Chair Jerome Powell not signaling any rate increase or cut as he speaks to the U.S. Monetary Policy Forum in Chicago. President Trump was asked about the threat of new tariffs' impact on the labor market.
The labor market's going to be fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We had too many people in government. You can't just do that.
Mr. Trump acknowledging U.S. employers added more than 150,000 jobs last month, albeit below expectations.
These are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised.
Following new Russian attacks targeting infrastructure in Ukraine, President Trump now saying he's considering sanction and tariff action against Russia until a ceasefire and peace agreement is reached.
I think both parties want to settle. I think if I wasn't president, this war would have had no chance of settlement, zero chance.
Trump says he's actually finding it easier to deal with Russia than Ukraine. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
37 minutes past the hour. This is the Chad Benson Show, and I am Brian Wilson filling in for Chad, who'll be back on Monday. And I'm always glad to be with you. You know, knock off the dust, come in and then clear my throat for a little while and say a few things that I've been thinking but I haven't been sharing with anybody. Love the opportunity. Thank you for that, Chad. Thank you for that, WTN. I appreciate it. And by the way, I'm going to be around for a while. So, you know, I'm not going completely away. Just a little away. All right, so here is Pete Hegseth. It is just sort of a little weird, I got to be honest with you, to report on a guy who I know, who was on my show when I did the afternoon drive thing once a week, without fail, is now the Secretary of Defense. It's just sort of weird. But one way or the other, he is in the position of Secretary of Defense. He got in. It looked like for a while that he wouldn't get in, but he got in. He was able to do a remarkable turnaround on his nomination, and he became the Secretary of Defense, and he is now. And when he brings the press corps in, he's a little confrontational. For example, he says, you know what? You guys are not reporting this stuff in a fair and balanced way.
The press is interested in narratives. Our president is interested in peace. So we will get characterized one way or another. Oh, your stance is pro-Russia or it's all garbage. The president got elected to bring peace in this conflict, and he is working with both sides in a way that only President Trump can. Let's be clear. Only President Trump can, to bring them to the table to end the killing. And I can tell you from being behind the scenes, he is laser focused on making that happen. And we're closer today than we've ever been because of his leadership. Thank you very much, President.
Yeah, but, you know, the Democrats are trying to say, well, you know, Trump he's in bed with the Russians. I don't think that's true. He's thinking about tariffs or sanctions against the Russians today, according to the reporting. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, I think one of the smartest people in all of Washington. This man gets it. He understands. Now Secretary of State, he said people should be pleased with what's going on from a national security standpoint.
This should be a mystery to no one. The president, when he was a candidate and he was running, he said very clearly this is a war that never would have happened, and I believe that to be true had he been president, and we need to bring it to an end. He's working to he wants to be a peacemaker. Usually, and I made this point in multiple interviews, usually people are happy when our president, the president of the most powerful country in the world, is looking to prevent wars and to end wars. Somehow, when it's Donald Trump that's doing it, it's somehow a horrible thing. So, as I've said, it's important for us to understand we are blessed and fortunate to have a president that is looking to bring an end, if possible, to a conflict that's cost billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of lives and destruction that'll take a generation for Ukrainians and others to be able to recover from.
Yeah, I mean, why aren't more people? I mean, with the press corps, they just are in the tank with the left, and they can't even begin to look in a fair and balanced way at what's going on in the world. And Rubio's right to point this out. Most people would be pleased that we got a president who's out there trying to end a war where hundreds of thousands of people have died. But no, Democrats, because it's something Trump is doing, they have to be against it. That's just not going to win. That's not going to work with the American people. It's not working with the American people, as we said just a moment ago. You know, one of the things that I'm very pleased about is how effective I think Trump and Elon Musk and his cabinet are being in trying to depoliticize and de-weaponize the various arms of government. I mean, everything got politicized and weaponized. The Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, no doubt about it, the FBI. He's working very hard to make sure that we have people in these positions that are going to try to do away with that kind of stuff. And one you might not think about where, the left was having an impact was the weaponization and the politicization of the intelligence that we gather for our president. And you got now Tulsi Gabbard, who is there just a few days into the job, and she's trying to get her feet on the ground. She has an interview last night with Laura Ingraham in which she was asked, well, just how bad is all of the wokeism and all of the politicization of the intelligence community. Because as DNI, Tulsi Gabbard sits at the very, very top of the intelligence operations in our government. She oversees the CIA. She oversees the NSA. She oversees the people who take satellite pictures from around the. She's got all of the Defense Intelligence Agency. She oversees it all. All of it comes to her as the director of national intelligence. And she was asked, just how bad is the politicization of our intelligence gathering process?
From a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being worse than you thought, how swampy is the intel community? 1 to 10.
I knew it was bad coming in. It's worse than I thought in a lot of different ways. I'd love to come back and talk to you as we pull back the layers, really, of getting rid of the weaponization within the intelligence community, the politicization, and those who are, frankly, trying to shape intelligence according to their own view or their own agenda, rather than just providing our policymakers and the president with that unbiased, accurate, timely intelligence that they need to make their decisions. This example that we just talked about, where the Biden administration released these known or suspected terrorists or those with links to ISIS terrorists back into our country, you look at the dereliction of duty of that, but you also recognize this is one form of that politicization, where the Biden administration was so afraid of being labeled Islamophobes. They took this pro-Islamist bent in endangering our own national security that we see in that example, but we've also seen with the pro-Hamas, rallies on streets across the country and the riots, and so we see now with President Trump, he and I and others on the national security team are focusing our resources back where they belong, on keeping the American people safe and getting rid of those who seek to do us harm.
Tulsi Gabbard, and boy, am I impressed with her. I mean, she seems to really have, gotten a good read on what's going on, in a very difficult place to get a read on what's going on. You may be at the top, but you oversee thousands and thousands of people. And she's out there trying to figure out, is she getting the straight stuff, or is the intelligence being cooked by people below her? I mean, he's trying to get government back into doing what it should do, which is be unbiased and non-political. I mean, we're not supposed to use the government as a political weapon, and yet the Democrats did that. And going after Trump, and what is really remarkable is, people talk about, well, how bad that was, and it was bad, and Donald Trump is one of the only guys who could have stood up to it and survived and then succeeded in running for president again. But I mean, it was bad. It was so bad. And you know what? The American people have seen through what the Democrats were doing. They see through the games that were being played. They're not going to be, fooled again. We won't be fooled again. The new boss is not the same as the old boss. This is fun to watch. I mean, everything that we hoped would happen with a Trump second presidency is happening. He is doing everything he can to make government responsive to who? The boss. Who's the boss? You are. We're the boss. Government seems to have lost track of all that. The government is in place to serve our best interests, and sometimes they don't. And when Democrats were in charge, it got so far out of shape, so far in the wrong direction, that Americans said, we're had enough. I mean, there were a lot of people who weren't crazy about Donald Trump, who held their nose and voted for Donald Trump because they were so disgusted with what the Democrats were doing. And again, remember, just a few moments ago, I told you 75%, 76% is the actual number, of those who heard Donald Trump speak on the floor of the House the other day, despite all the interruptions and all of the theatrics that were going on by those on the left side of the auditorium there in the House chambers, he succeeded. 76% said they agree with what he had to and thought that this speech was positive. I guess the thing that I'm struck by as we go down this process is just how quickly this thing has turned on Democrats in such a horrible way, and how remarkable it is that the Republicans, who are now in charge of the House, the Senate, the White House, we got conservative control, although we're a little worried about Amy Coney Barrett right now. But we have political control, conservative control of the Supreme Court. It is now allegedly, 6-3 conservative majority. Although with Coney Barrett, it might be a 5-4 again. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. But I think it's remarkable, big picture, at how far they have come in such a short time and how quickly they were able to turn this thing around. It's still going to be a battle. There are forces within this government. There is a deep state at play in our intelligence community, in our Department of Justice, and virtually every agency of the government. And they are doing everything they can brilliantly to get those people to retire and go on and do something else so that we can bring back to government what government is supposed to be: responsive to the will of the people, responsive to what we want. And remember, again, we are in charge here. And the politicians have lost sight of that fact. Donald Trump realizes that fact. You know, he is absolutely, I think, acting in a remarkably positive and good way to set this country right again after being led down the primrose path for such failures of the Biden administration. Man, it went bad quickly in 4 years, didn't it? I guess perhaps I'm most pleased about is how the whole situation is being revealed to the American people. We're getting the opportunity to look at what Biden had done. I mean, we knew he'd messed up in Afghanistan. We have a war in Ukraine, largely because of him, because he was so weak in Afghanistan. We have a war that took place in the Mideast. None of these things are happening. And so, you know, he is the president of wars. Wars occurred around the world, and instability around the world has occurred. And Donald Trump is trying to return that stability, and yet all the Democrats do is throw rocks at a guy who's trying to end war. Man, I'm for it. I'm absolutely for it. This whole situation, big picture, as I stand back and try to get the 30,000 foot view of what's going on in America today, or the satellite view of America, is that we have done a tremendous job thus far of trying to turn this battleship around. Takes a long time to turn a battleship around. We're turning the battleship, the aircraft carrier, around and heading in a new direction that is more responsive to the American people. And Democrats, you can throw their rocks. They can criticize Elon Musk. Just knock yourself out. All you want. It doesn't matter. Because it is sound. What is it, folks? You remember from the old show? It's sound and fury, which signifies absolutely nothing. 50 minutes now past the hour.
All right, drivers in Madison, a crash is leaving only the right lane open, 65 southbound before the Due West Avenue overpass. And we've got some legislation that is freeing up doctors and healthcare providers in Tennessee to refuse care over personal or religious beliefs. That's advancing at the State House. We'll tell you about that and more coming up at 1 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Bringing you all the stuff you need to know, the important stuff. In just a few moments here. That's what he does each day. And then Bel K is in there pushing all the blinky buttons. I'm Brian Wilson in for Chad Benson. Who'll be back on Monday. Let's look a little ahead about what we're going to be doing in the show over the next few minutes. There is a lot going on with regard to news in Tennessee. We got this, the General Assembly's in session right now. And so in a few moments, we'll go through some of the things that are happening that have to do with education, have to do with transit over in Nashville proper, and the effort to do something about illegals in our schools. And we have these kids who come in here from, they're the children of people who come to this country illegally, and should they have to pay to go to school since they're not citizens? Interesting thought. We'll do a woke world segment. We'll talk more about the Trump's ability to do things and his efforts on the wall. By the way, is the wall? They're building the wall again. How about that? Winning. And we'll deal a little bit about into what happened with SpaceX. It was like there was a good news and a bad news situation. In that, yeah, you had a launch and you recovered right there. They grabbed another booster rocket. As it landed, they just grabbed it right back at the tower from which it launched. Unfortunately, that was the good news. The bad news was the rocket blew up again. So we'll talk about that and what does it mean. I love the fact that Elon Musk doesn't take 15 years to do something. Some of the other companies out there, they try to do things and they try to do them so that they would never have a failure. Elon Musk is absolutely happy to embrace failure. I don't know about you and me, I just think is interesting. I learn from my mistakes. And if you're a smart person, when you make mistakes, and we all make mistakes, and Lord knows I've made a share of mine. But when you make those mistakes, there's two things that can happen. You can wallow in regret, or you can learn from them and move forward. And that's what SpaceX does. Yeah, they blow up a few rockets now and then, but then they make such progress by having learned from their mistakes. Some of these other agencies, they don't test it like Elon does, and then what you end up with is a Boeing spacecraft that goes to the International Space Station and fails, stranding a couple of astronauts, including one from our own area. Please free Butch, let him come home. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then in the 2 o'clock hour, let me just say, we may be interrupted also by Donald Trump in the Oval Office. He's got some things to say, signing some more executive orders. Those have always been entertaining. If he comes up and does that during our show, we will go to that. Then in the 2 o'clock hour, we're going to do something that I used to do on my show on Friday. And because I want to hear what's going on with you, what you think, what's happening in your mind. How are you assessing? And, I like to have a directed conversation when we open up the phones most of the time. But every once in a while, it's good just to open the phones and say, hey, what's on your mind? So we'll have a free-for-all Friday coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I am Brian Wilson in for Chad Benson. We will be back right after the news with Ken Weaver. And just stay exactly where you are right now. We got a lot of stuff to cover, and it's going to be a good show for the next 2 hours. Time for the news now with Ken Weaver at 1 o'clock.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Drivers, we've got a crash, and only the right lane is open. 65 southbound in Madison. This is right before the Due West Avenue overpass. Got some sad news for Lady Commodore basketball fans. Looks like their huge rally has fallen short in the SEC tournament loss to South Carolina. And in Trump administration news, I see a report from NBC that the Trump administration's task force to combat anti-Semitism is going to withhold $400 million in grants from Columbia University for harassment of Jewish students, according to the task force. And that is set to start immediately. And according to NBC, Columbia University has reached out immediately to the Trump administration to work with them on this because they don't want to lose that money. In other news, Karen Travers at the White House says the president was talking about tariffs today.
President Trump again acknowledging Americans could see negative effects from his tariffs and trade policy.
There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve.
The president announced a 1-month pause on about half of imports from Mexico and 38% of goods from Canada, including auto parts and most produce. But he says more tariffs will go into effect in early April, impacting countries all around the world. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz on the next big meeting with Ukraine.
We think we're going to get things back on track. Secretary Rubio, myself, and Ukrainian delegation will be meeting in Saudi Arabia next week to get these talks back on track, get the ceasefire in place.
Yeah, that meeting's set for Wednesday.
The president has been crystal clear, and he's been clear to all sides. The fighting has to stop. Both sides need to get to the table.
Yeah, President Trump talking about cards on the table.
Doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards.
But Trump has threatened Russia with what he calls large-scale tariff and sanction actions if they continue this relentless bombing campaign in the middle of these negotiations that he's trying to jumpstart. We just heard from the man who has the power to either raise or cut interest rates in this country, Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
The economy remains strong, but inflation does not continue to move sustainably toward 2%. We can maintain policy restraint for longer.
He did not indicate whether there would be any cut in the interest rate anytime soon. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hey, it's 6 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in the chair for Chad Benson, who'll be back on Monday, taking a couple of days off. Glad to be with you. Good, to dust off my desk and find some stories, and it's a wonderful opportunity for me to talk to real people instead of my bulldog. I spend a lot of time just telling my French bulldog about what's wrong with the world these days. And I'm glad that I now have, an audience of real human beings for a short while. Love filling in.
Hey, I've got some audio of Grogu listening to you.
Oh, you do? Actually, Grogu sounds a bit more like this. That is actually my dog. Can you imagine living with that?
And you do.
I do. Actually, I must say, as a puppy, she was a problem. We really had to work with her as a puppy and have a lot of patience. She's turned into a great dog. But she still does this. Anyway, I don't know. I thought it was a good idea at the time. I want to spend some time this hour talking about some things that are happening, not in the nation's capital, but things that are happening right here at home. We got a lot of ground to cover on some things that I think are interesting to people. We like to keep an eye on Washington. There's so much going on there, but we don't want to not cover the things that are happening in our own backyard here in the Nashville area, Middle Tennessee. Again, we got things going on. Let's talk about city government in Nashville. This story from Fox 17 hacks me off. And again, it shows me that, the government of Davidson County, Nashville, is just not getting it done. It has to do with homeless pods, little mini homes. They've been purchased apparently, but not distributed. What is the holdup here? What's the hang-up? We got a problem in Nashville with homeless people, and we have a solution here. These little homeless pods, give them a place to be so that they not have all the trashy, tents and these pop-up tent cities that occur all over town with homeless people. We got these nice little pods, little mini homes. Mayor's office has indicated the pods sheltering homeless people are coming, but nearly 5 months after they were approved, they are still not in place. The mayor's spokesman says, "Oh, don't worry, we're close to doing it. A light at the end of the tunnel." But what's happening? The COVID-19 quarantine pods that Metro bought with $1.2 million cleared a hurdle, Fox 17 reports, in being repurposed as homeless pods. But they now have a new roadblock. When will they be distributed? The answer unclear, which impacts the city's homeless population, estimated in the thousands. Scary, isn't it? We have thousands of people who are on the streets in Nashville. And we have a solution to make their life better and to make the city look a lot better, as these nice little neat mini pod homes that were developed for the government during the quarantine. And here they are ready to go, and we can't get them delivered. Activist Dee Dee Bird, who's a founding member of Reclaim Brookmead Park, says the city lacks a sense of urgency. "It's unacceptable to me that it takes this long," said Bird. It isn't the first time. Fox 17 found that in 2021, the pod sat in storage for years. The mayors apparently said that, they didn't meet the code standards. And after pressure, things changed. A memo to the Department of Codes and Building Safety from the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance on behalf of the state. Fire marshal had 2 requirements for the pods to be implemented. The thermal barrier for the pods requirement was approved several months ago after a recommendation was made by the Metro Department of Codes and Building Safety. The pods 12 feet apart requirement would happen after the distribution of the pods, but still no distribution. What's the holdup, they ask at Fox 17. No response. They're not answering. You got a problem, and you have a solution, and you paid for the pods, and everything has been signed off on, Why can't we get the dang pods delivered to the homeless people to make their lives better, which I would think you would be in favor of, and additionally, it would make the town look a lot better. I don't know what the hang-up is, but, here it is again. Your government not at work. The mayor is focused a lot on transit. They got his transit thing pushed through. I have some real concerns about transit and his transit plan, because I think that what it basically is we're going to set up, a bunch of these transit hubs around the area. It's going to be largely driven by buses. And my great concern is, what are they going to do and how are they going to pull it off, and what impact will it have on people who decide not to take public transportation, who have to come into work in their cars? Because I think you're going to have dedicated bus lanes. Where are those bus lanes coming from? You're going to build new pavement? No, that's too expensive. You're going to take existing pavement away from other traffic. I don't like that idea. But he has 11 transit projects now announced. Let's go through some of them. A low-income fare subsidy program will increase the number of individuals qualifying for free or reduced fares on WeGo public transit. So some of that money is going to be done in a way to allow them to use transit at a cheaper cost than you and I might get. An expansion of WeGo, their bus service. They've purchased 12 new buses to support increased service levels. Let's pray that they're not electric buses. Because I'm telling you, people who've done that have lived to regret it. The Murfreesboro Pike Q Jump. They're going to build an access transit lane, a business access transit lane in the outbound direction between Shoemate and Edge O Lake, with a Q jump signal at Edge O Lake, saving 2 to 4 minutes of travel time by allowing buses to bypass 1,400 feet of queued up traffic, producing 10,000 hours of time savings for riders. Well, we'll see. The rest of you have to just suffer. West End curbside bus lane pilot improves travel time for buses between 25th, 31st Avenue. Fiber installation. What does that have to do with anything? A critical technology component for signal upgrades and transportation system technologies. Well, we do need upgrades there. The South Broadway Transit Center initiates planning for a new transit center south of Broadway in downtown Nashville, enabling decentralization of the transit network to allow for more convenient crosstown routes. So the first transit center goes up. Street improvement projects, 39 miles of street infrastructure projects. That's probably sidewalks more than anything. New bus operations and a maintenance facility. That's going to happen. Main Street, Gallatin, all access corridor phase, all kinds of stuff. So that's underway. 11 big projects. But watch them closely. I'm telling you, Democrats, as a rule, and Democrats do rule Nashville in a very significant way. Democrats, as a rule, are enamored with the idea of buses and bus lanes, and keeping mostly the real bottom line is keeping your car out of downtown Nashville. They don't want you to come to Nashville. They don't want you to drive your car. That's why they keep taking lanes away and giving them to the bicycle people. This is why they're going to take lanes away from you and make them dedicated bus lanes. That's why they're building things to go around your traffic. I've always said, and I truly believe with every fiber of my being, that you can't have an effective transportation solution for this area if only Nashville is making the calls. Now, I'm told, I've had conversations with people, and I'm told, yeah, well, they talk to us, and, we know that, what they're doing and all of that, and we're working hand in glove with them. I don't know. I just think they have different priorities. And the main priority is they hate cars. They hate the fact that you want to drive your car to Nashville. Watch them closely and see if I'm not right. Another story on this from the Tennessean. O'Connell ready to roll out the first 11 projects. $59.3 million in unbudgeted sales tax generation through June 30th. So their half a penny has already generated, they believe, $59 million. How about that? That's something. So he's got his first 11 projects. Look, I think we do have a transportation issue. I am just of the belief that the thing that Nashville has approved, which is, by the way, a pretty loose framework, is all that they approved. It gives the mayor a lot of flexibility here. And what I think about Freddie O'Connell is he wants to stop traffic coming into Nashville. He wants to make, if you live in Murfreesboro and have to drive to the city, if you live in Mount Juliet and you got to drive to the city, you live in Franklin, you live down in Brentwood, in those areas, you got to drive to the city. Nothing that's going on here with this plan makes it easier for you to do that. In fact, what you're probably going to end up doing is you're probably going to end up parking your car somewhere and taking a bus. You ready for that? I don't think that people of Middle Tennessee are ready for that. In other news, question being asked by the News Channel 5, I think it's a good one. Is Tennessee ready if President Trump dismantles the U.S. Department of Education? The answer, according to them, is it depends on who you ask. Tennessee Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton says he's in favor of the move, claiming they've even offered their insight on this to the Trump administration. We've talked to the White House, told them we're willing to help in any direction, provide feedback, and what that looks like. What education completely returned to the states might look like, Sexton wasn't sure, but still welcomed the prospect. I love the idea of having the Department of Education become basically a conduit, which, better yet, just dismantle the thing and do away with it. We did fine without a Department of Education before there was a Department of Education, and people and kids were being educated back then. But if it becomes nothing more than a pass-through, federal funds back to the states, and the states get a big block grant and get to do what they want, I'm for that. We need to make sure that we're doing it right. And we need to make sure, as I think, we are doing in Tennessee, and other states are following suit, we need to make sure they have options if they are in a place where the school districts aren't getting it done. Is that a perfect solution? No. But is it better than having kids go to classes that are failing? I believe it is. I believe, if it's not working, let's try something different. And if that doesn't work, then let's either try to fine-tune it and make it work or do something else. But what we're doing now is not good for our kids. And it's not good education on any level. Bring it back. Bill to ban cell phone usage in the classroom passes the Tennessee Senate and heads to the governor's desk. Most schools around the area have a policy now where you're not allowed to use your cell phone in the classroom. I mean, I'm told that in some classrooms in Wilson County, there's just like a basket at the front of the door, and when you come in, you toss your cell phone in the basket, and when you go, and at the end of the day, you pull it out, or you lock it away in your locker. One way or the other. The idea is apparently that we don't want kids using their cell phones and the distraction that it causes in our schools. According to News Channel 5, the bill leads a lot of the details up to the school districts, including whether a student is allowed to have the phone in their person, just on silent or zipped up in their backpacks. Districts would also determine the punishment structure. The bill also allows other forms of technology like laptops, or watches to be banned from the class. There are exceptions. If a student is an English language learner or has a medical or developmental condition, that's allowed. If signed into law, the bill allows for phones to be used in the event of an emergency. But the representative who wrote it insists school districts would handle the communication process in a crisis, not the students themselves. One thing that I have heard parents say about this, I do believe that education is being hampered by the use of cell phones, kids distracted by cell phones, etc. You got to have a policy. Most the school districts have a policy. Now it's going to become state law that you can't have cell phones in the classroom. The one thing that I do feel that parents have a good argument about when they say, I don't like this idea, is they want to be able to get in touch with their kids during the school day, and they want more than anything to make sure their kid is okay if there should be an incident, a shooter incident or some other kind of crisis at the school. They want to know their kids are okay. They want to be able to dial their kids and get an answer, or have their kids call them and say, we got a problem. But by and large, there are ways to work around that where the phones are nearby and can be grabbed in a matter of seconds, but let the kids not be distracted in the classroom. More in just a moment, 20 past the hour.
Big traffic problem right now in Madison. 65 southbound is closed due to a crash right there before the Due West Avenue overpass. The Trump administration has begun canceling hundreds of millions of dollars in grants to universities where Jewish students are harassed. These stories and more coming up at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yeah, let me just add a little something to that, Ken Weaver. I'm
Yes, sir.
pretty sure that a lot of these protests that you're seeing now, once again, it's all about, supporting the Palestinians, etc. I think all of those protests that you're seeing, the kids that are protesting may not even be students at the school. They cover their faces. They wear glasses or masks. And the people out there who are causing all this chaos, I think you understand, are basically agents of chaos who just land. There's a group of people in America that can just show up and know how to cause all kinds of chaos and all kinds of problems, and sort of, I guess what the word is, amplify the feelings that may be there on campus to the point where you have people out of control and protest. Those people are not students at that college or that university.
I expect to see a lot more of this once the weather warms up.
Yeah,
I'm just curious if you know what the going rate for a paid protester is, because I know. No, I'm being serious, because some of these people got to be paid protesters, and I just wonder what they make, because I need a side hustle.
Yeah, listen, I'm telling you, it is there, and tracking down the money has always been sort of a tricky thing, hard to do, but they are getting support from somewhere, and this is not grassroots. This is what you call AstroTurf.
Yeah.
This is generated to make a point, but they are taking maybe one little small element in a college where you have some students who are upset about something. These people come in from the outside, and I guess the word is they agitate, they amplify it, and they stir up the problems, and they cause. And those kids do not go to that university. They travel from hotspot to hotspot, and their job is to alienate and agitate and try to turn things into something to get coverage, so that Americans think, well, things are out of control in America.
And the more bodies you have in front of the camera, the more intense it looks.
That's right. It's exactly what's going on. And these people are at the Democrats' beck and call. And it's all very shady and it's all very cloudy, but the Democrats basically, are in cahoots with these people. And it happens. And when you see a protest, you need to say, okay, how many of those people are really students at that university, and how many of the people who are out there protested came in order to agitate and take advantage of that situation? I'm telling you, it's all a big game to them. We were talking about Tennessee politics very briefly. Just get this in here, because this is one of the big debates that's going on in the General Assembly right now. Tennessee Senate advances bill empowering schools to charge illegal immigrants tuition or deny them enrollment. The Tennessee State Senate Committee on Education voted on Wednesday to advance legislation that would allow local school districts to charge tuition to the families of illegal immigrants if they are living in the country illegally, refuse to pay or decline enrollment. You can also decline enrollment. No, I'm sorry, you can't come here. As originally submitted, Senate Bill SB 836, brought by State Senator Bo Watson of Hickson, would have given school districts the authority to decline enrollments who are in the country illegally, drawing concerns it would violate precedents set by the Supreme Court. The version passed by the Senate Education Committee was amended and now specifically references the 1982 Supreme Court case, which established that school districts cannot deny access to public school based on immigration status. Lawmakers specifically note in the amended legislation over the intervening 4 decades, the number of illegal aliens present in the United States has nearly quadrupled. With these facts considered, the amended legislation would allow school districts and charter schools to require students provide proof of citizenship, that they are seeking to obtain citizenship or otherwise in the country legally, in order to receive an education at taxpayers' expense. Love it. Love that. I'm sorry. We are not an endless open bank where you can come to this country and try to, hit us up for a free education. We're just not going to go along with that anymore. We have to take care of America first. Make America great again. 30 minutes past the hour. Time for the news. with Ken Weaver.
1:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Again, drivers, I'm seeing that 65 southbound is shut down there in Madison due to a crash. Full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. The Trump administration's anti-Semitism task force says it's canceled $400 million in grants for Columbia University for harassment of Jewish students during the big pro-Palestine protests during the war, which Hamas started by murdering thousands of Israelis on October 7th of 2023. NBC News says Columbia quickly reached out to the Trump administration to say it's ready to work with them. White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz updates the effort to bring the war in Ukraine to an end.
We think we're going to get things back on track. Secretary Rubio, myself, and the Ukrainian delegation will be meeting in Saudi Arabia next week to get these talks back on track, get the ceasefire in place.
President Trump today threatening what he calls large-scale tariff and sanction action on Russia, but says Russia is better to work with in this.
Doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards.
Jobs report out today shows 151,000 added last month, but Alexis Christoforous thinks that didn't show the whole picture.
We are going to see a change in the number of layoffs. We are going to see a change in the unemployment rate, and that's because this latest jobs report does not reflect the entire picture. It doesn't reflect all of the layoffs in terms of the federal workers. We just saw those minus 10,000 federal workers last month. We know it is much more than that. That's because the data collected for this report happens mid-February. So a lot happened between mid-February and now, and that will be reflected in the next jobs report and then jobs reports to come.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
36 past the hour. I'm Brian Wilson. You're listening to the Chad Benson Show, but Chad is off today. I'll be here through all the 3 o'clock. Then we'll bring in Matt Murphy. He'll take over and run all the way till 7. And I'm glad to be here with you, your friend and radio buddy, or your friend and retired buddy, as we like to say now. Glad that you're with us on Super Talk 99.7. Do a little woke news. I think this is sort of interesting. Oh, and by the way, before I get into that, we are watching the White House. There is a report that the president is going to sign more executive orders at 2:30 East Coast time. That would be any moment now here in Middle Tennessee time. And we're waiting to see what it's going to be. Is this the day that he dismantles the Department of Education through executive order, or does his best to try? We'll be watching that very closely. And if the president speaks in the Oval Office between now and the time I go off the air at 3, we will do our best to get that to you. All right? Woke World. This story from Washington Times catches my attention. NIH, National Institute of Health, transgender animal testing experiments more extensive than Trump said, he said. I'll try to read that again. NIH transgender animal testing experiments more extensive than Trump said. The feds have spent, under Biden's guidance, $10 million, for example, to study gay rams and their sex preferences. Who knew there were gay rams? I didn't know. The government spending on transgender mice that the president spoke about in his address runs even deeper than President Trump led on his speech in Congress. New numbers from the White Coast Weight Project shared with the Washington Times shows that the National Institutes of Health is currently funding at least 26 projects, including $64 million to manipulate animal sex organs and sex preferences, all with hopes of benefiting the transgender community. This includes nearly $10 million sent to the Oregon Health and Science University, to study whether gay rams can be forced to use female sheep, as sexual partners through prenatal infusions of testosterone. Researchers told the NIH that rams were the perfect test subjects because about 8% of rams prefer sex with other rams of the same gender, I guess. They have the same physiological differences that are associated with the preference. Meanwhile, at Tulane University, researchers collected $11.2 million from NIH to implant testosterone-releasing capsules in female mice to study their vascular health. They said it would help scientists understand how testosterone treatments affect transgender men. Justin Goodman, the project's senior vice president of advocacy, called the spending synonymous and symptoms of epidemic reckless spending at the NIH. We've actually found tens of millions more in active NIH grants wasted to create transgender lab animals, including a $1.1 million DEI grant to overdose trans rats on a sex party drug. The sickness of reckless government spending on animal testing has spread so badly that it can't be cured with a scalpel, only a chainsaw. If you heard the speech, heard the president talk about $8 million for making mice transgender. It happens. It's real. And apparently, according to this report, bigger than we knew. Wow. Your government work. You talk about trying to save, $2 trillion. Doesn't seem like it'd be that hard to get it to $2 trillion if you just cut out this kind of waste, fraud, and abuse. Why are we spending money on this nonsense? The RAM research dates back to 2000, and wow, it's been going on that long, and totals $9.7 million. There's a current award of $431,000 that was issued in 23 and will run through this summer. So, there's one. Meanwhile comes this report on all this transgender stuff that we keep talking about. And we have a real interest in this here in Nashville because of what happened at the shooting over at the school. Trans activists and woke medical professionals have long warned that denying young people gender-affirming care, such as a mastectomy and castration, increases their likelihood of self-harming and suicide. However, a new study published in the Oxford Academic Journal of Sexual Medicine, who knew there was such a thing, finds that these permanent medical procedures are themselves closely linked to suicide rates, increased suicide rates, and mental health therapy. And they say that the therapy, mental health therapy, is still the best solution. The study analyzed adult transgender individuals with gender dysphoria, post-gender affirming surgery based on their gender, and the time they underwent the medical procedures. It found that transitioned individuals who underwent gender affirming surgeries had increased incidences of mental health problems. Mental health outcomes included depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, substance use disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, assessed over 2 years post-surgery using all kinds of special medical codes. Additionally, those undergoing surgery were at significantly higher risk for depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and substance use disorders than those without surgery. See, Europe has been ahead of us on this. They went through this a while back and decided, you know what, it's not working. And this whole idea of gender affirming care is not gender, it's not affirming at all. I hate that term, by the way. I hate that term more than you know. Gender affirming care. It's the left's attempt to manipulate the language. Well, it's not really, transgender surgeries. It's gender affirming care. I call it butchery. They call it gender-affirming care. I don't like that term. But isn't that something? And Oxford Academic Journal of Sexual Medicine finds that all of that stuff still it doesn't solve the problem. According to the study, male subjects showed a higher prevalence of depression and anxiety post-surgery, while feminizing individuals demonstrated particularly high risk for depression and substance abuse. Despite the sobering findings, the study did not discourage the mutilating gender-affirming treatments, but recommended post-surgery mental health therapy. Wow. Just astonishing. What have we come to in this country? How is it that this stuff got to be so important under the last administration and so much money being spent to study these matters? When if you look at around the world at places where they have they've already gone through the thing we're going through with all of this gender affirming care. They did it much sooner than we did. And you know what? They found out more quickly than we have that it doesn't work, that it's not the right solution, that you ought to have some real concerns about this. Here in this country, we are now coming to the same conclusion, but it's just taking a while. And the administration is absolutely correct to try to claw back this money and to stop this kind of funding from going on. The woke arguments that we're seeing just don't hold any water. Look, I mean, I don't understand what it is to go through what you're going through. If you have gender dysphoria, I don't understand what it is, but I don't think that solving it through mutilation of young children is the solution. We have decided that's not going to happen in the state of Tennessee. The president of the United States doesn't want this to happen anymore. I think that the medical community, I'll be honest with you, I'll tell you why I think they're in it. They think it's something that will make them a lot of money. How did it come to our attention here in Tennessee? When we heard a speech by one of the doctors who encouraged the folks over at Vandy Medical to start doing more of these kinds of surgeries because there's great money in it. We can make a lot of money doing this. That's what the speech was all about, encouraging them to do this because it could make them a lot of money. We need to just come to the conclusion. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on the radio sometimes. I just don't think it works. And now we have this amazing study by Oxford that agrees with what Trump has been saying. It doesn't work. Let's go to the phone lines, Bell, if we could. I see that we have a caller that wants to talk about this particular issue. Jamie from Alpine, Tennessee, you're on with Brian on the Chad Benson Show.
Hey, Brian. I was just curious, wouldn't gender affirming care be, you're a girl, you need to stay a girl, we're affirming your gender?
I wish that it meant that, but it doesn't. Well, they use this term that says, there are people out there who think, that they were born in the wrong body, and we want to affirm their feelings and provide these treatments that will affirm their gender dysphoria. Whereas other parts of the world are looking at it and saying, gender dysphoria is actually a mental health issue that needs to be dealt with in a different way. We're slow to coming to that. I agree with you absolutely. Jamie, thanks for the call. Greatly appreciate it. Yeah, this is just nuts. And it seems like we're turning the corner here in America. That we're trying to solve these problems and that we realize how nutty it is. Look, when you talk about why did Trump become the president and why did he defeat Kamala Harris? Well, first of all, she was a terrible candidate. But the other part of it is, you have a situation where most Americans look at this and they realize what nonsense it is. They know what nonsense it is. And the government should not be paying for any of this kind of research. If you want to have that kind of research, find your private funding for it. The government is no longer going to do that. Again, an example of how Trump was able to find these issues. In the last election, when you started, where the Democrats really lost, this whole idea of women need to, and men need to be able to play in women's sports. That's where I think that was the issue that they really lost it over. They really lost the last election over that particular issue. Because most Americans know that's nuts. It's crazy talk. And it's not right. It is not fair to women. It's just it's unjust on so many levels. Well, we're trying to affirm their gender decision by letting them play on teams with women. I care a lot more about making sure that women's athletics are there for women to use to advance their careers and their lives. And for them, I had a daughter that played on the field of athletic play for many years, playing soccer. I would have been apoplectic if she had to. She was a defender. She was good at it too. She liked to defend, and she'd get right in the grill if anybody was coming at. She was the last line of defense before you got to the goal. And can you imagine a male woman, a person who was born as a male who now identifies as a woman, going up against a male striker who is taller, bigger, more strong? I would have been furious. I would have been outraged. And most Americans got that. That's where Democrats lost this election in my mind. That was just a step too far. I'm glad that we're heading back in the right direction, and I'm so glad that Donald Trump is putting an end to some of this nonsense in the research field. 50 minutes now past the hour.
All right, drivers, still working that crash, Madison southbound 65. It was closed due to the crash. The FAA is now investigating that SpaceX explosion after launch yesterday. These stories and more coming up at 2 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 55 minutes now past the hour. Ken Weaver will be here with the news at 2 o'clock in just a few minutes. We were talking about all of the gender-affirming care, and seems like we've turned the corner on that. A lot of people are reacting to that. Let's go to the phone lines, if we could, Bell. Bowed, I believe it is, in Lebanon. Bode, I'm sorry. Hey, listen, it's good to have you on the show. You're on the Chad Benson Show. I'm Brian Wilson. What's on your mind with this story?
Well, it's great to hear your voice. I'm glad you're making pretty frequent comebacks because we sure miss you to start with. Well, to me, it's called gender dysphoria, which dysphoria in itself, isn't that a mental disorder? Isn't mental health the better or going to get seeking mental health better than trying to have parts of your body chopped off?
You misunderstand. We need to affirm this mental illness with gender affirming care.
I'm with you on hating that phrase.
I hate
as well.
that phrase. I really do. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, or sex you were assigned at birth. There's another one that I can't get behind.
Yeah,
I
got you.
God made you what you are.
That's sort of the way it feels to me. I don't know. But again, I don't know what it is to go through that. But it seems like to me that, mental health and therapists, that's where they should go. They should go for therapy. This ought to be an issue where you get help from a qualified therapist. But the mental health system in our country seems to believe that, no, we need to affirm your sickness. I don't know. It's the way it feels to me. But again, I can't imagine what it is to go through it. Jared in White House, you're up next on the Chad Benson Show. Hello, Jared. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. Afternoon. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing what you guys are doing, keeping us informed. As far as this gender care stuff, okay, they said that there's a high rate of suicide if they don't go through the surgery. There's a high rate of suicide if they do go through the surgery. So why ain't people looking at the fact that they're crazy to begin with?
Well,
there's something wrong with them.
You speak common sense in my mind, Jared. I really do. I mean, if you have a situation where, okay, if we don't do anything, you're likely to kill yourself. If we do something, it doesn't solve the problem because you're still likely to kill yourself, then we didn't solve the problem.
And one more point that I want to make real quick is when I was a kid growing up, I watched the movie Frankenstein, and Dr. Frankenstein was a mad, crazy doctor. And he was mutilating bodies and putting them together. Ain't that what we're doing now?
Well, some would say.
What's so right? What's so right about it right now? What we need to leave it to God and let Him do it. And let Him decide everything that's going on. This scientific, let's see how Rams are going to react. I'm a little bit upset that my money went to that.
Yeah, me too. Let's go to another call here. Michael in Nashville, you're up next on the Chad Benson Show. Michael, your thought.
Hey, Brian, I want to go back. When you started talking about transgender mice, and I got a Democratic friend that said that Trump misspoke, that they are called transgenic mice, and those are mice that are generated to better understand onsets of cancer, and she's arguing with me that Trump's taking cancer research away. Do you know anything about that?
I haven't heard that at all. I haven't heard that criticism at all. But
look, I mean, transgenic mice.
Gendic. Okay, if you say. Thanks, Michael. Mark, wrap us up here in the last few minutes of this hour. What do you think, Mark? You're on with Brian Wilson on the Chad Benson Show.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for taking my call. So I've been a teacher in the Nashville area for 15 years. And back in 2019, I started attending professional development programs on gender diversity. And what they were telling us, it was news to me at the time. It was a brand new thing. And what they told us was if you got students that are questioning their gender and you don't affirm them 100%, you're going to cause them to commit suicide. And it was terrifying. And when I went through that meeting, I mean, the first thing I did was question my gender. And I thought, oh, man, I'm like 30, 40 years old. I'm in this meeting, and I'm questioning my gender. What is a kid going to do who's insecure
listen,
about
Mark,
who they are socially?
we have to get out of here for the news, but let me just say this. I think that a lot of this is going to be looked at in the future, and we're going to look back at this time of gender-affirming care and absolute disgust with what happened and how we allowed it to happen. Time for the news now at 2:00.
2:00 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. The Federal Aviation Administration is investigating the second SpaceX launch failure in recent months. Air traffic controllers warning pilots about the debris field after last night's Starship rocket launch that ended in an explosion. Here's ABC's Victor Oquendo in Miami.
Debris seen streaking across the South Florida skies, leading to ground stops here at Miami International Airport and other major airports. It was just minutes into the Starship's Test Flight 8, the unmanned rocket ship beginning to spin out of control. The breakup of the ship illuminating the sky from Florida to the Caribbean.
President Trump indicating today he's about to slap a hefty tariff on a specific Canadian import. Here's Selena Wang.
He's planning as soon as today to put 250% tariffs on Canadian dairy and lumber. The president saying that Canada has been ripping off the U.S. for years.
President Trump holding a first-of-its-kind crypto summit at the White House this afternoon, together with crypto czar David Sachs. Here's Elizabeth Schulze.
President Trump has had a total about-face on this. He used to call Bitcoin a scam. Now he wants to make the U.S., he says, the crypto capital of the planet. He is also, of course, personally invested in this. He launched his own Trump meme coin just a couple of days before the inauguration, and his family businesses benefit when the price of that crypto coin go up.
Head of the nation's central bank says the U.S. economy strong despite stubborn inflation. Brian Clark.
The Federal Reserve is not rushing to cut interest rates, as Chairman Jerome Powell acknowledged Friday.
The economy remains strong, but inflation does not continue to move sustainably toward 2%. We can maintain policy restraint for longer.
And when it comes to the economic effect of President Trump's policy changes,
uncertainty around the changes and their likely effects remains high.
Powell told the U.S. Monetary Policy Forum in Chicago the Fed is well positioned to wait for greater clarity.
U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz answering questions at the White House this afternoon about Ukraine.
The president has been crystal clear, and he's been clear to all sides. The fighting has to stop. Both sides need to get to the table.
And
we think we're going to get things back on track. Secretary Rubio, myself, and the Ukrainian delegation will be meeting in Saudi Arabia next week to get these talks back on track, get the ceasefire in place.
And President Trump taking questions about tariffs.
President Trump again acknowledging Americans could see negative effects from his tariffs and trade policy.
There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve.
The president announced a 1-month pause on about half of imports from Mexico and 38% of goods from Canada, including auto parts and most produce. But he says more tariffs will go into effect in early April, impacting countries all around the world. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hey, it's 7 past the hour, 2 o'clock. This is at the time of day where things happen in Washington, D.C. We're watching. There had been some talk earlier that the president might sign some executive orders during our show. If he does that, we'll go listen, because those turn into really good little opportunities to find out what's going on. But right now, I don't see that on the horizon. We don't have those pictures come in. When they do, we'll try to bring that to you as it occurs. In the meantime, the one thing I miss about not doing my afternoon show was that thing we used to call, Free for All Friday or Phone Your Farb Friday. I love that. And I'd love to do it again if you don't mind, because I really love to know what's on your mind. I find that, sometimes the things that I think are important, the things that you important are different, and I like to know that. So let me say to you right now, the phone lines are open at 615-737-9986. Talk about anything that's on your mind. You got a bee in your bonnet, a burr in your saddle. You know all that stuff. Maybe you want to try to take a position or that you think that maybe you think I'm wrong. That's fine. 615-737-9986. Get busy. We had some good calls a moment ago about all this transgender stuff that's going on, and the revelation that's coming now from our medical facilities around the world and researchers around the world that indeed all that transgender care was not working. Great discussion there. I love your insight. So get busy, folks. Got a lot of open lines here. 615-737-9986. What's on your mind? Let's get it off your chest. You'll feel better. You'll feel better. I know that people are wondering, what is the retirement like? While I'm waiting on the calls to get screened. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. What I found is somebody told me when I got ready to retire, that you're going to find yourself busier than you've ever been. You're going to find yourself with more to do than you can possibly imagine. It's been true. I really, since my last full-time show was December 24th, and I've been busy. I mean, real busy. And so I've been trying to look for some time to do some other stuff. And finally, the other day, last week, there was one day, and I go into my phone and I look and say, well, what do I got to do today? What's on my list of things to do? There wasn't anything. First time. So I sat on my butt all day. It was great. Junior in Woodbury, you're up with Brian on the Chad Benson Show. Can we take the first call there, Bell? Junior in Woodbury. Let's try to take that one. Bell, can I get call one? There we go. Junior, you're up with Brian on the Chad Benson Show. What do you think?
Hey, Brian. Glad to hear you back on there.
Yeah. What's on your mind?
About that State of Union address the other night there, why that Democrat Party reacted about the, I think his name was DJ Daniels, that little 13-year-old boy fighting cancer and
right.
stuff, and they just sat there. And all through the whole night, none of them clapped or that little boy was more of a man than that whole party.
Well, I got to tell you, Junior, when I saw that the address and I watched that particularly, it was a very touching moment. And when that young boy reached out and just gave a hug to the Secret Service director, that was about it. And there was a wide shot where I was watching on some of the other networks to see what their reaction would be after the speech, and they took a wide shot. Every network has the ability to choose their own shots. They set up a pool. And all these shots come back to them, but they get to choose which ones they put on their air. So they have them all coming in on a different button. So they push. And I saw a wide shot where I thought I saw some Democrats standing. And apparently a few did, but not most of them. You're right. It was really.
I didn't think none of them did.
No, a couple did, but not many.
And then that Al Green, that was pitiful.
Yeah. Made a lot of people mad. Sure didn't work out well for Al Green, did it? All right. Junior, thank you. I want to move on. Mitchell in Thompson Station. You're on the Chad Benson Show with Brian Wilson today. So, Mitchell, what's on your mind? What's bugging you?
Well, what's bugging me mostly is getting rid of all the dinosaurs in our government. How are we going to get any new ideas for this country when we have people that's been sitting there for 50, 60 years with their fingers up their butt.
Well, what would you like to do in that regard?
Put term limits on every office.
Well, you know what? I take a different position on this. Everybody says we need term limits. Term limits. We have term limits. They're called elections. If you don't like what's going on, and enough people don't like what's going on, those people don't get reelected. Now, a lot of times elections are about name ID, and these people have been in office for a long time, have great name ID, and they're going up against people who don't have great name ID. But, I mean, honestly, we do have an opportunity to do something about it.
Wait a minute. The president is elected, and he only has a term of 8 years.
That's true. That's true. That was decided by, long before we got to where we are today, though. You're right. All right, Mitchell, thank you. Larry in Lebanon, you're up next on the Chad Benson Show. Brian Wilson filling in. What you got there, Larry? What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I'm a disabled veteran, and we adopted a daughter back in August 16, 2024. And I can't get a new birth certificate from the state. They say it'll take up to a year to do that. I can't get her on my insurance. I can't get her listed as a dependent. I can't get her ID cards. Can't do anything. Get attorneys.
Let me a question. Does she have a passport? Because I know I'm an adopted dad, and we had to have a passport to get her back in the country. And as a result of that, they told me that the passport was proof of citizenship.
No, this is she's born here in the United States. She was our granddaughter. We adopted her as a daughter, and my attorney has called. I've called. We can't get any information from either the local health department or the state.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Larry. Who's your congressman or congressperson?
Ole is local, and I've already
Is it Ogles?
Everybody. Yeah. I've already written Blackburn and several others that are the local officials, and I haven't gotten any word back from them.
Well, I think that's a shame. I'm going to ask you to stay on hold, and I'm going to ask it because this is something that I went through. My daughter came from China. We brought her back from China, and we couldn't get citizenship. Took the longest time to get that straightened out. You're right, and that ought to be something that gets resolved in very short order. Yeah. All right, Larry, stay on the line, and Bell's going to... Oh, I'm sorry, Bell, we lost the call. Call back and give Bell your number. I'll follow up with you. Let's go to Janet in Franklin. Hello, Janet. You're on with Brian on the Chad Benson Show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Brian. Good to talk with you today. Thank you so much. I just wanted to talk about... I guess it's like twofold. Mental institutions, health and wellness institutions, we need more of those around this area, unfortunately. A lot of the transgenders, and it's not just transgender children, it's kids, I believe, from 18 to 30, and I say kids because I'm 60. But anyway, I know a few people, one in particular that has a son who has a lot of mental instability, possible schizophrenia. It has been so difficult for her to try and get him into a place that will help him and work with him instead of putting it all on her. Everything is extremely overwhelming for him. Unfortunately, she's a single mom doing everything that she can, but there's a lot of different instances, and I know you don't have time to go over them, but when you've got kids that are yelling, screaming, they're in the room by themselves, and you say, are you okay? Is everything okay? Don't interrupt me. I will cut you. And then you call the doctors, and they say, well, get them to the emergency room. What are they going to do? This young man has got trouble in his head that he needs help, but there's so few institutions, or I hate to say it like that, but back in the day before they opened the doors and let everyone out.
Well, first of all, Just blessings on the person who has to put up with that. I mean, it's a bad situation. You know, I've often said that we don't do enough in the mental health arena. It's expensive, and we don't spend enough money on it. And then when things happen, you find out that they're all, you know, for example, the thing that happened over the Covenant shooting, you know, we found out this person was in therapy and was and outpatient therapy. She should never have been in outpatient therapy.
No.
Yeah.
No. And that's what I'm talking about.
I do think that I will say that I think, Janet, if you don't mind, I think the thing I will say is I think that the state of Tennessee understands this, and our leaders understand that, and it's a really tough nut to crack. It really is. It takes a lot of funding to do those kind of things, but we've got to have a mental health system that works for those people who are just, you know, troubled in our country. We need that.
We're lacking. Yes, we're lacking horribly across the U.S. And you know, since 2020, I mean, kids already had anxiety, and that's coupled with 2020 and everything else. But I get you. Love you. So sorry you're gone, but love when you come back and you join us.
I'll be dropping back in now and then. Thank you, Janet. Appreciate it. David in Nashville. David, what's on your mind today? You're on the Chad Benson Show with Brian Wilson filling in.
Hey, you talking to me?
Yep, go ahead, David.
I'm sorry. Hey, I don't know if you're aware, but older senior citizens, this Medicare changing your insurance, I bet you I get 50 to 60 calls a day wanting me to change my insurance, and every time I try to explain it to them, I've already taken care of it, don't need their service. I guess, have you been hearing anything at all about that, or?
And no, I mean, but I mean, I'm telling you, the scams out there are real. Now, I have reached the age of retirement.
Right.
I don't keep this a secret. I'm 69 years old.
Yes.
And next year I'll be 70. I never thought I'd make it to 70, but I'm almost there. And I will tell you, you do get a lot of this kind of stuff that comes into the mail. Here's what I would say to you, David. When I pick up the phone and it's a phone call and it's a telemarketer or somebody who wants to, you know, pull some kind of scam on me, you know what I do? I hit the little red button and I hang up.
Well,
I mean, just don't engage. That's the best thing I can give you. I got a couple of more people who want to talk. We got to take a break here at 20 minutes for some commercial messages. Be back in a moment. John in Lebanon, you're up next. Steve in Cookville, you're after that. You're listening to The Chad Benson Show, and I'm Brian Wilson.
The South Carolina Supreme Court has cleared the way for the first execution by firing squad in the U.S. in nearly 20 years. We'll tell you about that more coming up at 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
That's Ken Weaver. He'll have the news at 2:30. We're in the middle of taking phone calls right now. And you know, it's sort of I'm trying to redo what we used to do on the afternoon show. I just love to open up the phone calls on a Friday and just find out what's on your mind. Let's go to Steve in Cookville. Hey, Steve, you're on with Brian on the Chad Benson Show. What do you think? What's on your mind today?
Do you think that Nashville will try to pass a toll tax, as New York City does, to drive a car into downtown?
You know, this is discussed from time to time, Steve, and I mean, this was discussed in Washington, and they just said, give it a try if you want. But Washington was a little different because Washington, D.C. is basically a federal city, and Congress controls the purse strings to a great deal of what happens in the District of Columbia. So they were able to shut it down. I think it's a stupid idea, and quite frankly, I just can't imagine that the state legislature would allow that to happen ever. And so we'll see. I don't think so, but it's been talked about in other places, and it works in New York City for some reason. I don't know why, but I don't think it would ever work here. Let's go to Jimbo in Rutherford County. Hey, Jimbo, you're on with Brian Wilson on the Chad Benson Show.
Hey, Brian, thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I had a quick question about an executive. If you know of an executive order that would have affected military funding and in turn affected like JRTC programs.
The what kind of programs?
The JROTC, like the high school program.
Haven't heard anything about it, but I will say this, that, you know, in the slashing of government projects and government programs and trying to claw back money that's, you know, basically being used on stupid stuff, there are occasionally going to be mistakes. I mean, we are cutting with a chainsaw, and I think maybe in the recent days, Trump has realized that the cuts need to be done with a scalpel more skillfully. So maybe something fell through the loop there. I don't know, but I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, my daughter was supposed to have a big regional competition at Fort Knox, and it got canceled today. It was supposed to be next weekend.
That's because they're going to go see if there's any gold there. All right, Jimbo, thank you.
Yeah,
Philip in Nashville. Hey, Philip, you're on with Brian Wilson on the Chad Benson Show today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I was going to go back and refer to what you were talking about a few minutes ago about the illegal aliens getting charged tuition and things like that.
Right.
Do you remember back some years ago I used to hear about, and we had them at our school in the early days, about the student exchange program where we would send somebody to another country to learn, and they would send somebody here, and they would stay with families here. Do you know if it still goes on today?
I think it still goes on. I haven't heard of anything like that in a while, but I'm sort of out of the circles where I would hear that kind of stuff. I don't have kids in school anymore. But, yeah, no, I think it still happens.
You know, that would be a good way for people to have kids come over and learn our way, and we could take them there and do the same thing. And I remember it used to happen quite often, but I never hear of it anymore.
You know, I think it still happens, maybe not to the degree it once did. Philip, thank you for the call. How about let's go to, here's one of my favorite topics. Let's go to line 6, Bell, if you don't mind, to talk about daylight saving, which is going to happen this weekend. What's on your mind? What do you think there, Lom?
Well, it's coming up this weekend, of course, and President Trump has been talking about switching to one or the other, and the last I heard, they're looking to do away with daylight savings time. And what my issue is with this is, in Nashville in particular, living in this area, is if they switch from daylight savings, if they don't do daylight savings time and keep it standard time like it is, in the middle of summer, it's going to get dark here at 7 o'clock at night, which is, who in the hell wants to live at 7 o'clock at night in the dark in the summertime? And I just hope, if they're going to do that, my two options are, if they're going to do away with daylight savings time and keep it like it is, then let's move that timeline over to west of Dixon somewhere and put Nashville in the Eastern time zone, so it'll at least get dark at 8.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's going to happen here. They talk about this, and they talk about this, and they talk about this, and they talk about it, and they never do anything. They never can get the votes. I am of the opinion that we need to be on daylight saving time all the time. Yeah, that's what I want. And I like daylight saving time. I like it better than the other.
Yeah, and to be this close to the timeline is the issue, though. And if they don't do daylight savings time again in the middle of summer, it's going to get dark at 7 o'clock.
It's all about time zones, and we set up these time zones. You're right. We're on the extreme east side of the central time zone.
Yeah.
Back in my hometown of Odessa, it would not get dark during daylight saving time until almost 10 o'clock. It was great.
Yeah.
9 o'clock for sure. And it was really nice. But we're on the right side of the time zone, and that doesn't work that well for us, but it works for people on the left-hand side of the time zone. People have a hard time grasping that, but there's an hour's difference between here, as the earth rotates, between here and West Texas.
I know. Yeah.
Really something.
I grew up in Knoxville, so I was on the kind of toward the west side of the Eastern time zone, and it doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock.
Well, here we go. We're going to do it one more time. I wish we would just stay on it when we come back. It is 2:30 now. Time for the news with Ken Weaver.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. And in Madison, 65 southbound is closed due to an overturned vehicle. This is going to be between Old Hickory Boulevard, exit 92, and Briley Parkway, exit 90A and B. Full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Well, the man who has the power to raise or cut interest rates says inflation is not moving. Here's Brian Clark.
The Federal Reserve is not rushing to cut interest rates, as Chairman Jerome Powell acknowledged Friday.
The economy remains strong, but inflation does not continue to move sustainably toward 2%. We can maintain policy restraint for longer.
And when it comes to the economic effect of President Trump's policy changes,
uncertainty around the changes and their likely effects remains high.
Powell told the U.S. Monetary Policy Forum in Chicago the Fed is well positioned to wait for greater clarity.
A law professor at George Washington University weighing in now that the South Carolina Supreme Court's cleared the way for the state's first execution by firing squad in the U.S. in nearly 20 years.
The ironic thing is that South Carolina forces prisoners to choose between 3 different alternatives. In his lawyer's words, that's between a violent death by firing squad, a torturous death by lethal injection, or electrocution, which he says is basically frying his client.
Brad Sigmund sentenced to die tonight for killing his ex-girlfriend's parents. Now, here in Tennessee, while lethal injection is the primary method of execution, a prisoner can choose the firing squad if they wish. Victor Oquendo says the Federal Aviation Administration is now investigating the SpaceX launch explosion last night, the second in recent months.
Debris seen streaking across the South Florida skies, leading to ground stops here at Miami International Airport and other major airports. It was just minutes into the Starship's Test Flight 8, the unmanned rocket ship beginning to spin out of control. The breakup of the ship illuminating the sky from Florida to the Caribbean.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
It is 36, almost 37 minutes past the hour. The last few minutes of the Chad Benson Show between now and 3 o'clock. We'll get a conversation with Matt Murphy here in just a short while. See what's on his mind, what he has on tap for this afternoon. He'll carry us all the way till 7 o'clock. You're going to be well informed if you hang around with Matt Murphy. You listen to that show, you're going to get a good dose of what's going on in the world and a good dose of his opinion. The Democrats. I'd like to talk about the Democrats between now and the time that we come to Matt here in a few minutes. They're just losing it. I mean, you got this group of people out there, like Maxine Waters, who is, they're just throwing out just wild and crazy stuff. Making the accusation, for example, that Elon Musk, Elon just man, he just stands on their last nerve, doesn't he? That's what my mama used to say. You're standing on my last nerve. Well, Elon Musk stands on the Democrats' last nerve. And now you have Elon being accused of stealing the last election by Maxine Waters. And here it is. Maxine Waters speaking about that. And here we go.
And we don't know everything that Elon Musk has done with his high technology ass. Mm-hmm. We don't know what he's being accused of by some, as it may relate to the election. But we're not going to give up.
Not going to give up? Where is the evidence? I mean, just throwing something out that like so casually is so irresponsible. And that's all they're doing right now. It's hard work undoing all of the damage that was done during the Biden administration. Now, as for this speech that was given earlier this week by President Trump, he got 76% approval ratings. Democrats, about 27%. It's amazing. And even over at CNN, Harry Enton, who's their pollster, says that Trump is doing well and that people like what he's doing. And he just had one recommended, and that was if you're going to cut, have Congress make the cuts. It would be hugely popular. But listen to Harry Enton.
Let me just say a few things. Number one, when it comes to government spending, Americans are in love with the idea of cutting government spending, much more so than they were 5 years ago. I think it's like 55% of Americans who say they want to cut the size of government. They want to make sure it's doing less, not more. I think the number was reversed, was 55% who said it should be doing more back in 2020. So that's one thing. But Elon Musk is not a popular guy. I mean, that's the bottom line here. If he is leading this effort, I think it's going to go it's not going to go as far as it would if Congress was leading the effort. And this, I think, is the big question. Can Republicans in Congress actually get their act together? They have such a thin majority. If they can, and they're the ones who are in charge of cutting the spending, that would be a much better situation for Republicans.
He brought up Elon Musk there. Elon is just driving them crazy. Here's a guy who comes in, he doesn't draw a dollar's worth of federal money. He doesn't take a salary. He's just there trying to do something and cut waste, fraud, and abuse, which I'm telling you, as these stories start to come out, it is shocking where our money was going. And if they want to have Elon in there doing this in a big way, I think that's fine. Let Elon take the slings and arrows of the Democrats because he doesn't care. And it doesn't matter to him. I mean, what are they going to do? He's Elon Musk. He's got more money than God. He's not breaking the law. He's just out there trying to help. And if you want to attack Elon, that's fine. It takes some of the heat off of Donald Trump. Mark Penn is a Democrat pollster, and he says that things went really well for Donald Trump the other night.
And I just think the idea of the Democrats thinking they could sit there through this and not kind of be part of the process and people not showing up at all. Look, Trump is a duly elected president in a joint session speech. Everybody should be there. Everybody should be polite. They'll get their opportunities to, do their thing. And look, it's a reality that the person giving the speech has a double-barreled shotgun and the person giving the response has a pop gun. But Trump, that was probably his best, I think his best speech ever, really. And I think the emotional power of the examples and the stories that he told, and I'm looking at some of the poll numbers, coming back on it, was very strong. And the Democrats look silly. And Democratic numbers are really tanking. They are at the lowest point that I have ever seen the Democratic Party since maybe, the days that it lost 49 states.
Yeah. And he's right. They are just flailing around, the Democrats are. Failing and flailing. It's true. I would like to hope that they continue this for a while, because they really are, glomming on and accepting these policies that only have 25% support in America, while Trump is embracing the policies that have the support of 75 to 80% of Americans. It's not going to work out for you long term. But let me just say this. I want to just say a word about Democrats. They're flailing and they're failing. I don't expect that they're going to do that forever. They will figure out a strategy and find leaders. They haven't yet. Right now, as far as this whole thing that happened on the floor of the House of Representatives while Donald Trump was trying to give a speech with Al Green, and all the protest and the pitiful protest paddles that were brought up, all that stuff, remember that? Apparently, the people who were involved in that were taken to the woodshed by the Speaker's office. Former Democrat Joseph Knowles, here it is. A group of Democrat members of Congress who jeered, displayed handheld signs in protest, or used other message to distract from President Donald Trump's speech on Tuesday evening to Congress have been reprimanded in a closed-door meeting with their own leadership, according to a recent report. Multiple Democrat members of Congress made headlines for their public protest, writes the FoxNews.com, Tuesday evening after a joint session of Congress. Notably, Democrat Representative Al Green was censured by Congress on Thursday morning after he shouted at Trump and waved his cane in a threatening way at the president during his speech. Well, here's what's happening. Those people have been dragged into the Speaker's house into a come meet Jesus meeting. It's a consultative process, one source familiar told Axios of the meeting, that have occurred since, involving both protesting members of the House Democrat leadership. We understand the pressure they are under. They are not being talked to as if they are children, the source continued. This is the best line ever. We are helping them understand that their strategy is a bad idea. It was a bad idea, and I don't know that they're going to be able to help themselves, but I will say to you this. We should take advantage of the moment, because they are failing and flailing and in disarray, and we can get a hell of a lot of stuff accomplished in that environment where they don't have a clear idea, they don't have a clear plan, they don't have a leader, they don't have a spokesman, and they keep doing stupid stuff that just pisses off the American people. They won't do that forever, so we have to take advantage of this moment. I mean, they're being talked to. There are those within the Democrat Party who realize the mistake of their strategy, but basically, Donald Trump is laying the trap, and they're walking right into it. Their Trump derangement syndrome is so serious and so much a part of what they are about. I mean, if Donald Trump were to hold a press conference today and say, I'm here today to tell you that the sky is blue, there would be Democrats who would immediately call a press conference and say, no, it's purple. I mean, they'll argue with anything that he says. He was right when he said, there's nothing I can say to satisfy this group. And you know what? That is not sitting well with the American people. But I implore you, we need to get as much done as we can. So if there are members of the Republican Party and the House of Representatives, because we got very narrow margins, who stand in the way of the progress that Donald Trump is making, we should come down on them like a ton of bricks. Because I'm promising you, listen to me, I covered the town for 31 years. I've watched it as an observer of politics for a lot of years. 50 years I've been watching politics. And what I'm going to tell you is you got to get it done in the first 6 months of your office. Now, Donald Trump had 6 months, but he was new and he didn't understand how Washington worked, and he maybe made some mistakes and it didn't go as smoothly as perhaps it could have in the first round. But he learned, And he came in with a plan this time, and the plan is going to be something that I think will really, really get a lot of things done if he acts quickly. If we go beyond 6 months, we're going to find that the Democrats have reorganized. The Democrats have now got a message. They figured out what their mistakes were. They're all on board. Once you get them on board, they're disciplined. So we've got to act quickly. But the Democrats are getting an earful right now. Listen to this story that I just found on Fox News. I love this so much. California Democrat says that a flight attendant told him that the Democrat Party looked heartless for not standing for a boy with cancer. California Democrat said he was politely chased down by a flight attendant at an airport this week who told him his colleagues looked heartless for not standing for this young 13-year-old boy with cancer who was honored during President Trump's address to Congress. It's Representative Ro Khanna. He said the interaction with the flight attendant, whom he identified as Jim Barrett, unfolded in Chicago. This is what the flight attendant said, according to Ro Khanna. Sir, I am a Democrat, but the way the party behaved was embarrassing, made us look heartless. I don't care who is up there. You stand for the boy with cancer, Khanna recalled. Be more rational and get your act together. He said, Ro Khanna said, I replied that a few of us did stand and clap. We must be the party that still believes in kindness, decency, and trying to bring people together, he added on X. Yeah, I'm telling you, there are some within the party beginning to get it. And the party will get its act together. The Democrats will get their... Right now, chaos rules. They are failing and flailing, but that won't last forever. Which means that we must take advantage of this moment like no other moment in history. We have some running room here, and we've got to take advantage of it. Love that. Love that so much. You know, in just a few minutes, we're going to take a commercial break. And guess what happens on the other side of that? Yes, we'll have a conversation with our good friend Matt Murphy about what's coming up on his show. A lot happening here on Super Talk 99.7. I am Brian Wilson, filling in for Chad Benson. He'll be back on Monday. And we got to take a commercial break right now at 49, almost 50 minutes past the hour. It is 54 minutes now past the hour of 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I'm going to tell you how great it is to live in bucolic Watertown. I mean, I love this town so much. During the commercial break, while you were listening to those wonderful ads, I made a call and set up a barber appointment, and I'll be in the barber's chair at 3:45 this afternoon.
Boy, oh boy.
Isn't that something?
You're just messing with me now, right?
I mean, and I'm gonna guarantee you, Matt Murphy, that when I get off of that barber chair, there will be more hair on the floor than there was the other night when you had your haircut. Well, I want to introduce you to Kim, my barber. You come out to Watertown, and I'll sit down, and Kim and I will make sure you get a decent haircut.
Well,
that was not a haircut.
I am formally inviting any barber that's willing to drive to the radio station this afternoon to cut my hair while I'm on the air. That's how little. I mean, no offense to this. I mean, I suppose I could take responsibility for this and say that I was not clear in my directive for the singing barber, and that's on me. That's on me.
Yeah, that's right.
But yes, I need more hair cut off. I need the party in the back to go away at some point before next Monday.
Yeah. No, we need to do this, and I would tell you, I'm sort of the old school. My dad, when I grew up, it was in the 70s, and I was in high school, and all my friends had long hair. My dad said, "Not in my house."
I remember when I was a kid, and this is a little after, that era for you, but I was in the barbershop with my grandpa at Buzzy Dent's barbershop, and I've told the story.
Buzzy Denton, that's like my kind of barbershop.
Yeah, Buzzy.
He give you a good buzz.
And we were sitting there, and there were a couple of fellows around. We were waiting on our turn. There was a few chairs, and a guy was walking in. He had a long, mop of hair, and Buzzy said, "Whatever that fella asks for, he's getting it shorter than he wants it." And that's before he came in. He comes in, and he, let him skip the line and just buzzed it off. And the guy's like, "Hey, I didn't ask for all this hair to go." I was, "Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted a little bit shorter than you did." And everybody had a good laugh about it, Brian. Everybody.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing worse than a bad haircut, but I got to tell you, you just didn't get a haircut.
Well,
so look, come on out. Just come on out.
3:45, huh?
Watertown, and I'll set you up with Kim, my barber.
All right.
And she will take good care of it.
Well,
and we'll get a decent haircut out.
You know very well that I need it. I certainly do.
I know. I was very disappointed in the quality of said haircut.
Well, and as we spoke about, and I talked about it on the air too, that when he first buzzed the sides, I went, "Okay, well, we're going to get a haircut."
It started to look good there on the sides, and then they just left it all long and stringy in the back.
It's like we gave up at some point during the proceeding, but we shall not give up on the audience this afternoon, though, Brian. I got a lot going on.
Well, tell me all about that, because that's what's up next.
I am fascinated with. You either agree with the death penalty or you don't, and I get that. I don't get so caught up in the method of execution, but I am a little fascinated in this case out of South Carolina, where they will be at some point, apparently, unless there's a stay by the governor, during our show, executing an individual by firing squad. First time that has happened since 2010. We'll discuss that with the audience. Also, a couple of things going on in the General Assembly. There's some, obviously we got to talk about daylight saving time, Brian. I know you guys were talking about that a little bit when you opened up the phone lines. And this guy, I've not talked about this yet on the show. It happened this week. This fellow by the name of Alex Thompson here in Middle Tennessee, who threatened the Fred Thompson, no relation obviously, courthouse. He wanted to blow it up. And he was begging to get arrested. There's a lot of mental illness going on with this, and I'm going to describe that to the listening audience. Plus, of course, unemployment rates and all of that going on. And I don't know about you, Brian, but I've given up on keeping up with the tariff talk. There's tariffs going, they're not going, they're here, they're not here. Our man, Donald Trump, is moving too quickly. I just trust that when all is said and done, everything's going to work out in the end on tariffs.
I think it's going to work out. I think it will, and I think it is something that is embedded in the history of this country. I was doing research yesterday because Alexander Hamilton. The play on Hamilton was canceled in D.C. Because they said, no, we can't go there because Republicans are in charge. And I was doing research. They don't know. It's Alexander Hamilton was in complete support of tariffs. He's the founder of our economy. I think he had a few things right.
Well, didn't we use tariffs mostly to generate money for the federal government prior to the income tax? I think
That's
so.
right. That's absolutely right.
Well, I've had so much fun listening to you over the last couple of days. It's been a joy, man.
All right, listen, thank you so much. Chad Benson will be back here on Monday. And as you know, the Matt Murphy Show is coming up next here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.